what's happening? Welcome into the show. This is the San Francisco 49ers Report by Chat Sports. My name is Jay Sr., and coming up, this is going to go down as one of the biggest, most pivotal, most important offseasons in the history of this Niners organization, and major offseason decisions loom for this football team as they are going to miss the playoffs for the first time since 2020. What are those offseason decisions going to be? What are some potential changes this Niners team could undergo? We're going to dive into all of that and more coming up here over the next several minutes. Before we do that, I am recording this prior to the Niners taking on the Detroit Lions. And if you're watching the show right now saying, I've already watched this Niners-Lions game, this video is going to be outdated, it has nothing to do with this Lions game. This has to do with the offseason and all of the big decisions that await for this football team, and it serves as a guide for what you can expect over the next several months. So don't go anywhere, continue to hang out, but if you are watching this before that Monday Night Football game, we'll be live right here on the channel for a Niners-Lions watch party. Be sure to hit the sub button, join us for that, but also subscribe because I have you covered every step of the way for what is going to be a huge offseason for San Francisco. So Nick Wagner, who covers the Niners for ESPN, put together a really good article outlining some of the things that we've already talked about here on the show, some things that we're going to get into throughout the course of the next several months going into the offseason. And I thought some of the things he had to say were very interesting, but this can really serve as a template and really a guide for some of the things that the Niners are already thinking about right now as an organization, looking ahead to 2025 and also beyond. Where things are right now for San Francisco, it's been a really disappointing season. 6-9, bounce from playoff contention going into last week's game against the Miami Dolphins. So this Niners-Lions game doesn't mean anything for either team. And a few words that really have defined this Niners 2024 campaign and terms that define this season: holdouts, contract disputes, drama, injuries, Super Bowl hangover, mistakes, frustrating, maddening, players declining, bad coaching, some lack of player development, choke jobs, and some awful losses, and a season lost after entering the year as Super Bowl favorites. And I thought that Brock Purdy put it best a couple of days ago, I should say, when he was just asked about how this year has gone. And he said, quote, "It's just been not clean football across the board. Last couple of years, we played team football for 4 quarters, and I felt like we were pretty dominant. This year, it has just been hit or miss." And that's coming from the team's quarterback, who really watches everything closely because he has to. He's the team quarterback. He's a team captain, and naturally he's involved in every play on offense. And then he understands what's happening on the defensive side of the ball as well. And that's how it's been. Even when the Niners have a hit, they have a miss. Even when they do something well, they do something poorly. Even when they have a good play, they cost themselves and shoot themselves in the foot. It has been a roller coaster ride of a year, and really a lot of the things that could go wrong have gone wrong with this team. It's been so bad that marquee players have declined. There have been a lot of injuries, but there have also been tragic deaths involving this football team, and I just think that them missing the playoffs is going to help them going into next year. An opportunity to sit back, relax, reset, catch a breath of fresh air, and come back motivated, healthy, and erase their memories of what happened in 2024 for next year. And in speaking of Brock Purdy, massive offseason question for the Niners, and it's one of the biggest storylines across the entire NFL. Will he get paid? How much will he get paid? How much he does get paid? How will that impact which players stay, which players go for 2025, and looking ahead beyond that? And will the Niners this offseason rebuild? Will they retool? Or will they reset? Fred Warner said this to Nick Wagner: "We've been able to keep a lot of core pillar guys for a long time, but at the end of the day, each year, each team is different. The offseason, things will happen however they're going to happen." And with Purdy, in March at the league meeting in Orlando, Florida, this is this past March, after the Niners lost the Super Bowl, Niners owner Jed York had talked about Purdy and said that when his time arrives to get a contract, he will be taken care of with what could end up being the largest raise in NFL history. Large raise, not because of the average annual value and the guaranteed money that he's going to get guaranteed, right? Like, we don't know the contract that he's going to receive, but he's been one of the best bargain deals in the NFL since 2022, playing at under $1 million. And going from $1 million to whatever he's going to make, yeah, it's going to be one of the biggest raises that we've ever seen because of how little he was paid since the start of his rookie contract, since being selected last in the 2022 NFL Draft out of Iowa. Now, looking ahead, he's going to be eligible for a contract extension on January 6th. As of right now, he is going to make $1.1 million in base salary in 2025. That's the final year of his rookie contract. And when you think about his production since he took over for Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance in December of 2022, after being the final pick, yeah, he could demand a contract worth $50, $60 million, maybe even in the excess of $60 million to top Dak Prescott's deal, which reset the market at 4 years, $240 million when he inked that deal back in September. Since Purdy took over as the Niners starting quarterback, ranks 4th in the NFL in QBR at 69.3, 6th in passing yards, more than 9,000, 1st in yards per attempt, tied for 1st in EPA per dropback, and he's 7th in passing touchdowns with 61. It's a pretty good resume right there. We'll talk about the decline coming up, but he can use that resume to his advantage in contract negotiations. And speaking of those negotiations, in the past 12 months, we've seen other comparable quarterbacks in the neighborhood of Brock Purdy get these contracts that could really impact the next Purdy deal. And Purdy is better than some of these players. Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff. They've all signed extensions between $55 million annually with an average of $112.4 million in full guarantees. George Kittle, and talking about his quarterback, who his numbers have exploded since Purdy took over in 2022, said this: "The nice thing about contracts is when you play at a high level, you can compare yourself to other people in the league. And when other guys are getting paid $50 to $60 million and you're a better quarterback than they are, it's hard not to get that same amount of money." George Kittle's basically saying, yeah, I think Purdy is better than those quarterbacks. And when he goes to the negotiating table with his agent, he has some power and leverage on his side because of what he's been able to produce. Now, according to Nick Wagner of ESPN, multiple league sources say to him, both sides are aiming to work out lucrative long-term extension talks this offseason, as matters involving many millions of dollars often are. Purdy's situation is complicated. As you know here on this show, I don't do a ton of reporting, but when I'm fed information, I pass it along to you because I care about you. I want to inform you, and when I report things, it's because they're legit. I've heard from the Niners side, they want to sign Purdy. They look at Purdy and Kyle Shanahan as the quarterback head coach tandem moving forward. And I've talked to people on the Purdy side who tell me he's not going to take a hometown discount. As for the numbers declining for Purdy, it's very important in this conversation. He ranks 10th this year in QBR at 65.6, but his numbers have decreased since 73.4, or since the 73.4 number that he had last year. His touchdown passes went from last year to this year 31 to 17. Yards per attempt dropping from 9.6 to 8.3, and completion rate going down from 69.4 to 65. Of course, yeah, that has to do with a lot of players being hurt, some players declining. But when you're thinking about paying a quarterback $50 to $60 million and you're noticing a decline in play, a couple of thoughts creep in your mind. Is he not as good as we thought? Is the league catching on? Is he going to continue to decline? And if he does that, could we be screwed if we give him that bag? You also have to pose this. In Northern California, oftentimes you're playing in pretty good weather, but Purdy is bad in bad weather, and he really struggles in inclement weather. In 5 starts with rain or snow at kickoff, he's 2-3 with a QBR of 49.7, a completion rate down to 57.4. His QBR is 72 with a 67.7 completion rate, and the 49ers are 25-10 in 35 other starts. Think about the landscape of the NFC. Yeah, you have to play in some cold climates. That's both in the playoffs and in the regular season. In the AFC, when you're trying to pick up wins, yeah, there's some tough places to play with some bad weather, and in Santa Clara, sometimes it can rain. It's not going to snow, at least hopefully. Weather patterns have been crazy over the last several years. Hashtag climate change, if you want to get yourself involved in that type of debate. But the point is, when you're paying a quarterback $50 to $60 million, he struggles in bad weather, that's a little bit of a concern. Because you look at other quarterbacks who don't struggle at all, it's impressive how they can perform in inclement, subpar weather conditions. As for what the Niners thinking could be, the Niners could choose to pay top-of-the-market money to Brock Purdy, whose struggles they think might coincide with the injuries that the Niners have suffered to some of their best offensive players. Purdy has produced well beyond that rookie contract, and he's offered much-needed stability at the position. And a question that I've posed to the people, if not Purdy, then who? It's a terrible quarterback class. I don't think there's anybody in free agency who you look at their name and you say, he's going to be better than Brock Purdy. And if you don't have a quarterback, you're in purgatory in the National Football League. There are other options as well, and there all are alternatives. Niners could let Purdy play out the final year of his contract. They could use the franchise tag on him. If they struggle to re-sign him after next year, they could follow the plan that the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love had, and they could sign him to a short-term deal with a big raise to see one more year of good production if he can bounce back from this past year before then giving him top-of-the-market money. Obviously, it becomes a very complex situation and a polarizing situation here. Purdy did say this, I feel more comfortable in who I am, but I think I need to get better and get back to playing with the chip on my shoulder like I had for the first 2 years of every game, every down, trying to prove myself that I'm the guy for this team. So even Purdy admits this year hasn't played all that well. Now, coming up next here on the show, what other moves could the Niners make in addition to Purdy, and what could a Purdy deal do for those decisions? And what could the Purdy contract how could the Purdy contract, I should say, impact some of those other decisions? Stay tuned for that. But first, today's 49ers Report, sponsored by our friends at Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 200 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, best place to get real money sports action while watching your favorite sports. And it's awesome how you can win up to 200 times your money right now on Prize Picks, available in 30 states, including California. Also, Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards. So, daily fantasy sports made easy. Get $50 when you play, $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Some selections that we like going into Monday Night Football. Brock Purdy, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. George Kittle, more than 5 receptions. Amon-Ra St. Brown, more than 72.5 receiving yards. Pick more, pick less. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Run your game with Prize Picks. Get $50 when you play 5. Just use that code CLNS. All right, so let's move forward. You know, if Purdy gets paid, what other moves could happen for this football team? The Niners have 9 players ranking in the top 15 in pay at their position, with defensive end Nick Bosa, running back Christian McCaffrey, linebacker Fred Warner, tight end George Kittle, fullback Kyle Juszczyk, left tackle Trent Williams, and wide receiver Brandon Ayuk in the top 5. That group accounts for about 31.4% of the team's cap in 2024 and is slated to count about 46.5% of the estimated 2025 cap before restructures, releases, or extensions. Boy, that's a lot of money. Nearly half of the Niners cap devoted to that. And when you combine the price tag of those players, the injury toll, the players declining, the team's struggles, will the Niners trim some of these bigger contracts? And last offseason, after the Super Bowl, I had said, Niners are going to have to make some difficult decisions. They ended up doing that with a player like Eric Armstead. And they couldn't reach an agreement to lower his contract, so they let him go. And this offseason, more tough, emotional decisions are going to have to be made and could be made. As for a George Kittle contract extension, what is the future of Niners tight end George Kittle? Will they sign him to an extension with 2025 being the final year of his contract, or will they trade him away? Will they draft a tight end in this year's draft, a player like Tyler Warren out of Penn State, to start to plan for the future and avoid paying big-time dollars to a player who's still elite at his position, who's starting to get a little bit older? I do think that Kittle is a good candidate for an extension. He's coming off one of the best years of his career, third among all tight ends in receiving yards, second in touchdowns, fourth in catches, first in yards per catch. But with the Niners roster getting older, more expensive, do you want to plan for the future, let him play out that contract, and reset both with a player who's younger and cheaper at that position? What I would do, I think Kittle has played his way into and should be a Niner forever, and I'm fine with re-signing him to a new deal. Deebo Samuel, on the other hand, that's a different conversation. Deebo restructured his contract in September, a move that would mean if the Niners traded or released him before June 1 of 2025, they'd have to absorb a $31.5 million dead money hit on the cap. They could move on with a post-June 1 designation before March 23, or before his March 23 option, and that's an option bonus. It's due then, and then that would decrease that number to $10.75 million as the cap hit over the next couple of years. So you save yourself for 2025, but then you're having to pay him some money after that. But with Brandon Ayuk coming off a contract that makes him a top 10 highest paid wide receiver and coming off a serious knee injury, are the Niners going to be forced to bring Deebo back, especially if they look at what he did against Miami and they say, yeah, he still got it. He overcame the injuries, overcame pneumonia. He still has some pop. We saw it in that game against the Dolphins. Now, Ricky Pearsall has to find his way. Juwan Jennings is signed through 2025. Niners might not be able to sign him to a contract extension. And they might try to bring all those players back with Brandon Ayuk's uncertainty and just say, you know what, last year was a disaster. We think that Deebo's going to be okay. We think that Ricky Pearsall is going to make that leap. Juwan Jennings, expiring contract. He's still under contract. Let's run it back. Shanahan even said, I don't think Deebo slowed down. When you build up a bunch in camp and then you miss a lot of time in practice, it's hard to maintain that stuff. But by no means do I think he's lost it or anything. Now, he said that, and then he went out after that awful Rams game. He redeemed himself. Got to give credit where credit is due to Deebo because he did play well against Miami. But my question was after that game, and remains, the hell took so long? As for Javon Hargrave, we talked about this here on the show, had a recent contract restructure that makes it more palatable for the Niners to move on. Each team gets two post-June 1 designations. So that could be Deebo, it could be Hargrave. Hargrave, an even likelier candidate for the post-June 1 cut, as he would count $8.6 million in dead money in 2025, $17.485 in 2026, as opposed to nearly $25 million in 2025 without the designation. Now, I will say the Niners are top 10 in cap space going into next year already, and they can roll over their cap space from this year to next year, and currently it's number 1 in the entire NFL. A big question and questions revolve around Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw, two players who I've said I think the Niners need to bring those players back. San Francisco has 24 players who are going to be restricted or unrestricted free agents in March. Among those key names, Greenlaw, Charvarius Ward, who I think is gone, and safety Talanoa Hufanga. Greenlaw, Hufanga, I think need to be priorities, but their markets are really difficult to predict because of their injuries. The Niners value them a lot, but they're also scared shitless of these injuries. Since Hufanga became the full-time starter in 2022, get this, the defense has allowed 16.5 points per game, and they've gone 18-12 in regular season games when both Hufanga and Greenlaw have both played. When they haven't played, San Francisco has given up 24.1 points per game. They've gone 5-6. It's pretty crazy. That's why I think bringing those players back, you just watch the game, you feel their impact. It's important, and maybe you can get them on good contracts. As for fixing the offensive line, this ain't good. Talked about this so much. Brock Purdy's been pressured on 34.1% of his dropbacks this year, 10th highest in the NFL, well beyond the 31.5 pressure rate he saw last year. Trent Williams should return at left tackle. Niners have found something in Dominic Puni. Left guard, center, right tackle need to be addressed. You can find a center maybe in free agency, mid to late rounds in the draft. Got to find a left guard, got to find a right tackle. I'd draft a right tackle and get a gem in the first round. It's probably where I'm leaning. You can find good guards, good centers, good interior offensive linemen in the mid to later rounds. Colton McKivitz has improved this year. Not good enough, though. He ranks 53rd among tackles in pass block win rate. Left guard Aaron Banks is 46th in run block win rate. And Jake Brendel is last among qualified centers in run block win rate. Banks is going to be a free agent. Don't pay him. Jake Brendel has bad knees. Colton McKivitz entering the final year of his deal. Have him as a backup swing tackle. That's fine. But McKivitz and Brendel have no more guaranteed money left on their contracts. You could move on. Could the Niners move on from Nick Sorensen? Another big offseason decision here. There's been some good, some bad with Sorensen, right? Yards allowed per game, Niners rank 8th. Passing yards allowed per game, they rank 3rd. Pretty good. But they're 30th in the red zone, giving up a touchdown on 65.3% of red zone trips. And they rank 24th on third down defense. Tied for 19th in scoring, 17th in takeaways. And I've talked about Robert Saleh here on the show. Nick Wagner talking about Robert Saleh in his article on ESPN, saying this: with former coordinator Robert Saleh available and Jets interim coach Jeff Ulbrich, who the Niners wanted to pursue for the job last offseason, potentially options. There will be speculation about another coordinator change. Despite that, Shanahan has offered a vote of confidence in Sorensen. He said this, quote, "Nick has done a good job as a coach. No one's happy with our results by any means. I think he's been thrown into a number of situations that I think will make him better going forward." Look, if you have an opportunity to hire Robert Saleh, he'll have suitors as a coordinator. You hire the better coach over continuity and hoping that he's going to improve. Go with the sure thing. You want to run the same defense, bring back Robert Saleh. Don't think he's going to get a head coaching job. As for Brian Schneider, the special teams coordinator, Niners have to move on. These are some of the changes that could add some juice to this organization. Shanahan has expressed some confidence in Brian Schneider, but that unit ranks last in the NFL in expected points added. That's EPA at minus 38.07. The next closest team, get this, is Baltimore at minus 21.8. 17% difference nearly. Not good enough. All right, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Talk like this. I love team building. It's going to happen all offseason, and I can't wait to bring you the best, most elite coverage during this huge offseason, and you don't want to miss it. Subscribe now.